say I'm mostly a sculptor. Yeah, but I mean, mixed media is one way. I dabble in certain things. I think mostly, yeah, I mean, it just depends on what I'm doing. When I'm wearing my community engagement hat, it depends on what the people want. And sometimes when I have an idea, like I had an idea about something using fabric, I taught myself how to weave. So, because it just made sense. So that's kind of my favorite part about being an artist is like there's so many things to learn. It felt more, inclusive. Like maybe some of the kids weren't super skilled at the drawing part of it, but they were good at the cutting or the texture. I had them texture tiles. The kindergartners glazed all the tiles with those little hands. It was great, and it just felt more inclusive and just a better way for people. And then also there was no, other than the featured artist, there was no ownership, right? Everyone could pick the best tile and say they did that, and that was okay. Because so much, that's my other part, the hat that I wear as a community engagement artist. I've also noticed, the schools are taxed with more and more, with less and less. And so when I write a grant to work with a school, as much as possible, and I've been able to, thankfully, I bring them to a museum or Franconia Sculpture Park, which is north of the cities. Because, there's you have to take a Saturday and you have to pay usually and you have to drive, and like that's a big leap for some families. And so it's nice to go with them and sort of introduce them and say, hey, this is how you do it. Look, there's other stuff to see. So that, and sometimes with museums I like to go too because I have a sort of a way to introduce them to art to be, if you have an opinion, you don't need a lot of background, you don't need a lot of education. You can also just look at it and say, I like that, and that's good enough, right? That's okay. You don't have to know exactly who painted it or how or why or any of that. There's lots of different levels to be involved. Totally, and that's another reason with the small art galleries. Not only did I want it to be accessible for artists who are making work, because it's very small, you can, make something specific without a huge drain on your finances and resources. But also people who are walking by with a stroller or walking their dog or walking to work. Maybe they don't feel comfortable going into a museum, or they're worried they're gonna get charged and they don't have the money. So that's been really fun. I've been stopped by a lot of my neighbors when I'm changing it. And the kids in the neighborhood call it the art box. And so they go and check, and sometimes when I go to clean it, there's a little nose print where they look in, and so it's fun. And I try and have a combination of really accessible things, and then I've had some stuff that's a little conceptual, that's kind of pushing people out of their comfort zone, and I think that's a good way to sort of challenge people a little bit. I think my biggest moment was last year. I was at an art event in the cities, and I overheard somebody, we were in this group and they were sort of to the edge, and somebody was talking about small art. They're like, oh yeah, my friendship there. And I was like, it's me. I just felt like I needed to go home right then. Like, I felt so good. I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah, and so that's nice. Because it's a nice way to be able to show art without also having to open a gallery and have somebody there watching, and
Pay money for space.
Right. So yeah, that's kind of my jam, is to just be able to use what I have, and sort of when I get the door open, I shove my foot in and hold it while I scoot more people through. And that's kind of my jam. And that's the other thing, because I think we just overlook a lot of people that are completely capable. And I've noticed that in Rochester as a whole, I think it would be nice to see more visibility of all the people that live here. Not, I think we tend to keep our art in very small places and not make it public. show up in person and answer your emails. Like, it's a profession. It's, you know, this idea of this sort of wispy, fly away, hippie kind of, like, there are so many deadlines and budgets and everything, like, it's a thing. But I have found that most of my biggest success has been to show up in person. Show up to the show, you know, show up. If you work in the community, maybe help in other ways the community, like with Open Table, you know, and then we interface and we help each other. Like, oh, I hear this about this area, this neighborhood, this whatever. And just like be authentic and be professional.